I left school in, I think it was 1968. Started work at Bremer Mine as an apprentice electrician. Then at the age of 30, I got promoted to foreman. After 3 years, I got promoted to Namdeb, which is a big diamond mine on the west coast of Namibia. It was very big. At that stage, it ran the second biggest Caterpillar fleet in the world. So it was enormously big. Lots of machines, diverse machines. There was bucket wheel excavators, treatment plants, and light vehicles, commercial vehicles, 1,200 light and commercial vehicles, for example. And I now had 5 section engineers reporting to me. So again, the whole thing had now changed. But the stuff that I learned in the trackless section was now very appropriate. 5 years at Namdeb, then as it pleases head office, I went back to Bremer Mine for a short while, and then I moved to head office. The thinking at head office was that I need to spread the work that I had done at Namdeb across the whole De Beers group. So I was now very much in the sort of position that you're in. You had no line authority, but you're supposed to make people do things that they don't really want to do. So I was appointed as section engineer trackless, underground. I had never worked underground. I was an electrician. I'm now in charge of a trackless section which consists of diesel machinery and diesel mechanics and auto electricians and boilermakers and no electricians at all. So that was the first challenge, was the technical aspect of that. One of the things I did was that book that he looked at where the operators wrote that they changed pumps. Every time they changed pumps, I would go check the switch and see what it looks like. And I discovered that often after they changed pump, the switch was in really bad condition. Even though I may have looked at it just 3 days ago and cleaned all the contacts, washed out all the carbon, it was now in a terrible state. But I have to now convince somebody that my priority is, and there was no system that would deal with that. So that was the one thing. The other thing is, if I had too much work for this week, for the next 3 days, that was just too bad. It's only when we have a catastrophic breakdown that the foreman would call somebody in to help. Otherwise, hey, it's your problem, you handle it. The third thing was, I was not in control of spares. I had to ask the foreman to order the spares. So then, when I got to the foreman position, I was now determined. I'm not going to let my guys have these problems. So my solution was to give them the cards. You do your planning, but you now do it with the cards. So I can come and see what's going on here, and I get a copy of your card. So in a copy of the card was my spares control. If he says order something, I write it on the back of the copy. So I could now keep track of the spares on his behalf. I interacted a lot with the mine captains, and there was one particular guy, Ziggy Deuring. He was really hard on me, but he was good at what he did. It's time to maintain this machine. Sorry for you, Mr. Mine Captain. I realized that that's not a good idea. There's also always in mining a little bit of equipment abuse. So how do you speak to the guy about him abusing the equipment when you're treating him like that? So from my interaction with Ziggy, I realized that there needs to be a connection between these two. We need to get it and talk. What's your priorities? Can I have this machine? Can you understand it? My priority, I have to have this machine, that sort of thing. So I started saying to the guys after about 3 months or so, come and see to the planners and the foreman, come and see what I did in the plant. Some of it was still there. We need to do something similar to this, but I understand that my cards and boxes are not going to work. It just so happens that that was the time when there were reps running around selling these white boards with the magnetic strips to replace all the old black boards and chalk.
Fantastic.
And somebody said, why don't we use these boards and we just make a tag? So I said, okay, I'll go with that, but we've got to have a job card.
Yeah.
The steering mechanism is very complicated. We had a lot of problems with that. Same thing, tester artisans, they don't know how the thing works. Course for that. Problem fixed. Problem really fixed. Maybe not so much the overheating, but the 631 steering problem went away in a matter of 2 months. And once the job card is there, everything takes care of whether that job will get done or not. The priorities get sorted out. So we had less breakdowns. Our parts supply improved. Also for 2 reasons. Firstly, our demand was now less on the system because we were more organized. Everything wasn't now a breakdown. A lot of it we could give the parts supplier time to get the thing there. So that improved. And also, we were actually beginning to use less parts. Physically using less parts. So the cost came down. Just like you shouldn't schedule work if you don't have space in the workshop, or the artisan is going to be allocated the time and he can't execute the job. I like boards with little tags on it. And the people, once they start using the board, come up with all sorts of innovative ways of putting little stickers on it. We can see what is going on, and when we move the jobs around, especially when things get a bit tight with priority, and you say, okay, let's move that one out, and then we put this one in here. Okay, are we going to cope? Yeah, we're going to cope now. What are we going to do with this one now? We're going to put this somewhere. Okay, let's put it in here, but then we've got to take this one out. But, we can't go here with this because this one can't wait any longer. Now, you can only see that on the board. You don't see that when you move it in the computer. That's where the boards also become very handy. And the production guy can see you're not just doing this little job. There's hundreds of other jobs. There's hundreds of other priorities. And if he's reluctant, you can say, look, man, I also have to do this. Do you understand what we're dealing with here? In any way, Mr. Production Guy, and you're going to give it to me in the field, and you're going to give it to me for much longer. Make your choice. Yeah, it's a difficult one because what applies to the treatment plant may not work so well in an earth-moving environment where you have lots of machines. I think in a fixed plant, treatment plant setup, I would prefer to assign an area to a specific artisan. In the morning in front of the board, production guy is there, foreman is there, artisans are there. Fritz didn't turn up for work, what's the implication? These were. Jobs can now not be done. Okay, how are we going to deal with it? Mr. Production Manager, can you understand what is happening here? Resistance sometimes because especially people that are not so good at what they do tend to feel a little bit exposed when information like this becomes available. There's many more requirements that fall outside the window of maintenance. What all our training is about is to solve problems. If it's a mathematical problem, you develop a formula to solve the mathematical problem. It's a process problem, you develop a process to solve the problem. So that's what you need to do. You need to solve the problem. So don't let those things distract you too much from doing what you're trained to do, which is to develop processes and systems to solve problems. We just had to work with the guys and say, okay, look at this one now. Is it still okay? This joint. And the guy would say, yeah, it's still okay. And say, but are you sure? But the grease is coming out already. And that little seal there is cracked. So actually it's not okay anymore. Another 2 weeks and it'll be one of those urgent jobs. So let's schedule it for next week and then we replace it. So initially what it did, it seemed like it would push up our cost a bit because we were now throwing away some life. But it wasn't the case. The repair was actually cheaper now. Our Ziggy became so good that he had a specific procedure for what his miner must do when this happened. Because when the motor packs up, you can no longer move the LHD. So the first thing that would happen is they would send a call out for the artisan. The second thing would happen is he would drill holes directly above the machine, put roof bolts in, and get chain blocks there so that we can take the motor out. So by the time the artisan comes there, the roof bolts are in, the chain blocks are in, and he's just waiting for the artisan to loosen the motor so they can sling it out. I did have a very unfortunate situation where somebody got hurt. Then in the investigation, the question that gets asked is, how did this guy end up doing this job? And it was one of those things where the guy just decided he was going to do the job. And it turned out that he wasn't fully competent to do the job. It was one of those lifting things where, you know, they would train non-riggers to do a certain amount of lifting. He hadn't done that training, but he had seen other people do it, so he thought he's just going to do it, and he hurt himself quite badly in the process. Now, if somebody had actually allocated him the job, it probably wouldn't have happened. I would hope it wouldn't have happened. Somebody would say, no, this requires a little bit of rigging. You haven't done a rigging course. I can't give this job to you.